Lawmakers are reacting to President Biden's latest announcement about tapping into the nation's strategic oil reserves. What's causing the high energy costs in the United States, and what lessons can we learn from the energy crisis over in Europe right now? Joining us to discuss is Congressman Gary Palmer of Alabama. Congressman Gary Palmer, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Glad to be here.
Congressman, President Biden in a speech yesterday said the high cost of oil that the United States is experiencing is because of other countries, sort of to justify tapping into the emergency oil reserves. Here's what the president said.
With my announcement today, we're going to continue to stabilize markets and decrease the prices at a time when the actions of other countries have caused such volatility.
Congressman, what's your reaction?
Well, the president is doing what he's gotten really good at, and that's blame shifting, refusing to take responsibility for the decisions that his administration's made in regard to our energy policy. And what people need to remember is that one of the first actions that this administration took was to shut down the XL Keystone pipeline. Had they not done that, I believe we would right now be getting oil from Canada to the rate of about 835,000 barrels per day. But they made the decision to shut that down. They've also made it much more difficult for the small oil companies to get the leases and the permitting that they need to do more oil production. The cost of energy that we're experiencing here in the United States rests fully on the decisions made by the Biden administration.
Congressman, President Biden also recently asked the Saudis to cut oil production in a month, rather than right away. What is he trying to achieve?
He's trying to mitigate the damage in the midterm elections. It's unbelievable. I mean, when President Trump was on a phone call with President Zelensky in Ukraine and asked that they do due diligence in terms of investigating actions by Hunter Biden, he got impeached because it was clearly political, or it appeared to be political. This is clearly political. He's trying to get a foreign nation to make decisions about their oil production to benefit the elections in less than 3 weeks. And by the way, this idea that we're going to punish the Saudis for their decisions, it's their oil. We're sitting on enormous reserves of oil and natural gas in this country. And I pointed this out in numerous speeches that there's one reserve, one formation out west called the Green River Formation that holds 3 trillion barrels of recoverable oil. That's 3 times what the entire world's used in the last 100 years. And that's not the only formation that we have available to us.
That's incredible right there, that statistic. Congressman, how, if at all, is what we're seeing in Europe with their energy crisis impacting the United States, or are there some lessons to be learned there?
Absolutely. This idea that we're going to be 100% renewable within the next 10 to 15 years is a pipe dream. We don't have the engineering capability or the technology to allow us to utilize what really is intermittent power sources. When you have reliance on turbines or you have reliance on solar, those are intermittent sources. They're not consistent power sources. We don't have the storage capacity. The North America Electric Reliability Corporation put out a report last summer, summer of 21 actually, identifying what is the top risk to our power grid. And it wasn't cyber attacks, as many people believed it would be. It was changing the resource mix. They put out another report this year warning about coming blackouts, not in California, but in the Minnesota down to Louisiana, because they have shut down so many fossil fuel power generation facilities that the renewable generation cannot keep up with demand. So now we're talking about potential blackouts in the Midwest.
Congressman Gary Palmer, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
A report over voter intimidation in Arizona. The Arizona Secretary of State's office found it serious enough to pass on to the Department of Justice and the Arizona Attorney General's office. The unidentified voters said that they were approached and followed by a group of people while trying to drop off their ballot at an early voting drop box on Monday. It happened at the Juvenile Justice Court drop box in Mesa, which is in Maricopa County. Maricopa County reported last week that people had been recording voters dropping off their ballots at the Mesa drop box. This new complaint is an escalation from those initial reports. Former Vice President Mike Pence suggesting that he may favor somebody else over former President Trump in 2024. During a Q&A session at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., Pence was asked whether he would vote for Trump if Trump is the Republican nominee for president in 2024.
Well, there might be somebody else I'd prefer more. You know, what I can tell you is I have every confidence that the Republican Party is going to sort out leadership. All my focus has been on the midterm elections, and it'll stay that way for the next 20 days. But after that, we'll be thinking about the future, ours and the nation's, and I'll keep you posted, okay?
Pence also answered a question about the January 6th Capitol breach. He said January 6th was a tragic day and that he condemns the violence. Pence did not directly comment on questions about his own political future. He said that he and his wife will, quote, reflect at the right time, maybe in the months ahead, to determine what our calling is and to follow that calling. While Pence spoke at Georgetown University Wednesday night, some students staged a walkout. Thousands of suspected fentanyl pills were seized at LAX, Los Angeles International Airport, on Wednesday. Authorities say someone tried to go through the airport's security screening with an estimated 12,000 fentanyl pills disguised as bags of candy and snacks. That person fled, but the investigation is still ongoing. The DEA says fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat facing the United States. In 2021, a record number of Americans died from drug poisoning or overdose. China is the primary source of fentanyl trafficked into the United States. And border security and illegal immigration are some of the top issues heading into this year's midterm elections. How is the situation on the southern border right now? Joining us is Virginia Allen, senior news producer at the Daily Signal. Virginia Allen, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Virginia, there is really something to be said for actually going down to the southern border and experiencing it for yourself. You've just made a visit. What were some of the key takeaways from your trip?
You know, I think the overarching message from my time that I spent on the border, what I learned is really right now, for all intents and purposes, we don't have a southern border. I watched a scenario play out multiple times where illegal aliens cross, they wait for Border Patrol to come pick them up. Border Patrol comes, it's almost ho-hum. They come, they pick them up, they take them to a processing center, their name, their birth date, some basic information about who they are is taken down. We hope that they're telling the truth, that they're honest about their identity and who they are. And then they're given a bus ticket, a plane ticket, and they're transported to a city near you. So this is an issue that it's first touching the people that live on the border, those communities right along the border, but it's really affecting all of America. And truly, like we've said, you know, every community across the United States is becoming a border town.
And to your point, we're seeing the polling, and it's showing many voters historically voting Democrat, specifically Hispanic voters in border states, are against these open border policies and actually support GOP policies when it comes to the border. Did you get that sense with anybody that you spoke to?
You know, it's interesting. I spoke to Sheriff Joe Frank Martinez of Valverde County. He's a Democrat, but he's been very outspoken on this issue. He says we need to secure the border and we need to do it now. This is not a bipartisan issue when you talk to folks that live on the border, that experience this day in and day out. Whether Democrat or Republican, they all say step one is securing the border. I spoke to a woman named Teresa Esther Chaparro, and she lives about a mile from the border, and she described her house as looking like Fort Knox at night, just in order to feel safe in her own home. She's put up lights outside, a fence in her backyard. She's gotten a guard dog because she says she knows that there are illegal aliens running through her backyard at all hours on an often daily basis. She's seeing illegal migrants walk down her street looking for Border Patrol. This is just the reality that these folks deal with. And they are asking the Biden administration to take action and secure the border. But what we see over and over and over from the Biden administration is really just a turning away and ignoring the real crisis of what's happening.
Now, we've seen right here in Washington, D.C., the local government has voted to allow illegal immigrants to vote in local elections. Is this ultimately the end game, or at least should this type of situation be cause for concern with the open border policy we're seeing?
I think everyone has an opinion on, why is the Biden administration not doing anything? Why isn't he taking action? And, really, at the end of the day, in many ways, it seems like it's apathy. And the action that needs to be taken, step one, is that securing. It's fascinating. When I was down at the border, you'll be driving and you'll see sections of border wall that are complete. And maybe you'll be about 3 miles of border wall that's finished. And then you get to an area where it just stops and it's open. And you realize, wow, this is so easy for drug cartels, for human smugglers, for those with a criminal record to just walk a little bit further and easily come across our border. And yet Vice President Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden, they refuse to actually acknowledge that this is a crisis.
Virginia, do you think that the issue of illegal immigration is going to play any type of significant role in the upcoming elections?
I think it will, because this is an issue that is hitting truly all Americans slowly but surely. It's starting to affect people that live across the country. We've seen this in New York City, that they are being overwhelmed by the sheer number of illegal aliens that are coming into their city, and they're overwhelming schools. When teachers can't teach because half of their class doesn't speak English, that creates a problem for everybody. So I do think that we will see the issue of illegal immigration play a role in the polls. Of course, we know that voters' number one issues are those of the economy, inflation. We're all feeling that no matter where you live, whether you're in a big city or a small town. But increasingly, illegal immigration is an issue that's affecting all of us, and that it is of growing concern to all Americans because we see its broad-reaching effects.
Virginia Allen, really appreciate your perspective.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Between high prices and high mortgage rates, who wants to buy a house right now? Clearly, a lot of people don't. Home sales declined for the 8th month in a row in September, the longest housing sales slump since the mortgage collapse 15 years ago. But this time around, there's not much inventory. Usually a slowing housing market means a lot of houses are available, which would push prices lower. But there are far fewer fresh listings because presumably homeowners want to hold on to the lower mortgage rate they already have. So the houses that are up for sale are going for more, and there are bidding wars because of that lack of inventory.